I do a fair bit of metal casting, and this isn't really a metal casting video per se, but in the process of casting, I gather up a lot of different metals, non-ferrous metals like aluminum and copper and zinc alloys, as well as, different stuff for furnace maintenance and green sand maintenance. I've also got this giant space over here that's just full of trash. So let's see if I can use this space just a little bit better. So I'm going to be building a mobile bucket storage cart, and I'm starting with this existing platform that I have. I originally used it for my casting stuff, but it just kind of hasn't been that practical, and I haven't really used it, so it's just kind of taking up space. And these are the buckets I'll be using. I really like this square profile. While driving by this nearby restaurant, I found every so often they'd throw out one or two of these butter buckets, so whenever I was randomly driving by, I'd just kind of stop and take a bucket. So for the structure of this cart, I'm using good old bed frame angle iron and just getting it cleaned up here. And here I'm choosing the angle I want these buckets to sit at. I cut out these little wooden wedges at around 30 degrees, and I'm using them as angle templates to tack the first shelf. I'm also using these Fireball tool squares, which are really handy for tacking at 90-degree corners. Next, I'm figuring out where the bottom of this bucket is going to lie. This cart is going to have front and back racks offset so that the buckets will sit at an angle, so I need to figure out where the front will lie in the distance between the racks. Then I cut out the front and the back racks out of this frame with the portaband here. And here's this cart again. Anyway, so I started to take this thing apart. Mostly I wanted to reuse these casters, but the frame is really good material too. And I don't need this plywood. I'm using the old pinky clamps here. Probably should have been using some real clamps, but c'est la vie. Here I'm using the block that I measured for the spacing in between the front and back racks and just cutting things out. And I measured and cut this spacer block for the heights between the buckets. Here I'm using it to help tack the shelf in place. And same thing on the other side, and still using those same 30-degree wedges. And after tacking, I just kind of test fit the buckets here. For this project, I didn't really have a big upfront design or CAD or anything like that. I just kind of designed as I went along and built to the materials I had. And in general, I prefer this kind of design, but it bites me in certain ways, like we'll see in just a little bit. Next, I'm cutting out the base, so this is going to be just like the old cart that I had before, but fit to the actual racks that I'm making. And just a quick side note, this is this portaband stand I got recently. I was really liking it, and it makes really quick work of this angle iron. But obviously you want to be careful when you're cutting things off. Just clamping up some corners here before tacking. If anyone knows the song I'm humming here, feel free to drop it in the comments. inevitably when I went to go tack up that last corner, I just had the worst gap in the world. So, of course I tacked it up anyway. I'm hoping it's still going to be at 90 degrees because of the fireball tool square and the clamping. And it turns out that this portaband stand was just not very square. I thought I'd taken the time to actually get it square, but clearly not enough. So yeah, this is just kind of a test fit of the front and the back racks to the base. And then just welding out the base. This is probably the best weld you'll see in the whole video, so I hope you enjoy it. Next up, I just drilled some holes in the base for those casters. And then, I just kind of test fit them on. So I found out things were a little bit too tall and wouldn't fit the space. So I cut them down, and then I retacked them. Randomly I was deciding I wanted to use stick for this part. I don't remember exactly why. But yeah, brushing up on the old stick welding. And just feeling it out after tacking to make sure it looks good and fitting up the buckets next. And yeah, now the height came out great, around 38 inches or so it'll clear the space. Let's get welded. Here's another thing I didn't anticipate. When I dropped the height of the racks, I didn't have any clearance to attach the nuts and the bolts of the back wheels anymore. So I had to grind off the zinc on these casters so I could tack them on. I normally hate tacking on casters like this, but I needed to in this case. I think I actually ran out of MIG gas, that's why I was stick welding here. And here I'm just fitting on the rest of the casters. And here's the whole thing in action. Just bringing it up here against the wall to see how it can fit in the space. I added some magnets to the tool chest there so the cart can just kind of bump into place and stay attached. And then we get to woodworking. I decided I wanted to make use of the side that's not up against the tool chest, so I'm cutting out a space for a little French cleat. I had this left over from a French cleat wall I did, so I just decided to use it. Yeah, just drilling a bunch of holes here. Here's that French cleat getting fitted up. And here it is. At some point off camera I painted this, and here I'm just adding some accessories to the French cleat. So let me give you a little tour. Bottom left here we have Satanite, which I use for lining my furnaces. Next up we have calcium and sodium bentonite, which are binders for the casting sand I make called green sand. Up here we've got some copper, and eventually I'll put some bronzes in here. In the middle is some Zamac and zinc alloys. Far right is aluminum wire, so really pure aluminum, useful for alloying. And up top we have A356 aluminum, basically busted up car rims, which is just really great stuff for casting with. Then here's just all kinds of different aluminum ingots, mostly extruded. And last up we have miscellaneous bucket. So yeah, that's the bucket cart. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, I'd really appreciate it if you could give it a like. And for more content like this, think about subscribing and hitting that bell for notifications on new videos. And until next time, keep tinkering.